Hello and welcome to episode 34 of the Ecuador Insider Podcast. I'm Jesse Bayer, joined as always by my business partner, Darnell Dunn. We also have a great guest for you tonight who I'll introduce momentarily. Coming to you today on Monday, June 5th. I'm here in our offices in Loja, Ecuador, and Darnell actually comes to us tonight on vacation in Guadalupe. So tonight, we are joined by Jeremiah Bonet, and somebody I'm super interested and excited to talk to tonight. Jeremiah is actually moving to Loja in the coming months, and we've kind of developed a friendship over the last few months. And I've found out that he is really accomplished professionally, which has been a nice addition for some of the things we're doing. But Jeremiah is involved in quite a lot of things that are interesting to me, and I think also interesting to our listeners. You can find him or check him out at bonetenterprises.com. That's his last name is Bonet, bonetenterprises.com. Jeremiah has a background in real estate. He's a vegan. He's a health coach. He runs a digital marketing, social media, web builder, basically a digital web agency as well. He's most certainly an entrepreneur and really involved in some cool stuff, some sovereignty stuff as well, which we may get into later in the show. So I just want to say thank you to you, Jeremiah, and of course to you as well, Darnell, for being here with us. Once again, we're Abundant Living Ecuador. You can find us on our website at abecuador.com. It's A as in Apple, B as in boy, Ecuador.com. And we'll jump right into it. So I'll start with you, Darnell, real quick. How's Guadalupe?
Fantastic. Having a great time. Had a couple of difficulties getting there. For people who aren't familiar with the island, it's an overseas territory of France in the Caribbean. So hard to go wrong with that. Having a great time, spending some quality time with family and eating good, enjoying the weather. Can't complain.
Yeah, and for those that are wondering, those are crickets in the background. So Darnell will be muting in and out, but when you're hearing crickets in the ocean in the background, you're doing okay. Jeremiah actually is coming to us from New Jersey tonight, Cinnaminson, New Jersey. Jeremiah, how are you, man? Thanks for being on the show.
Excellent, my friend. Thank you guys for having me. I'm pretty ecstatic to be part of your live podcast here, and really pumped up to share with you guys and your listeners what I've been doing for the last few years that has improved my lifestyle.
Awesome. Very good. So Jeremiah, let's start maybe a little bit just with some background. I know you were in real estate. I know you did some other things prior to getting into all the stuff you're into now. But if you want to give people the short to intermediate version of just your background and what brought you to today, and then we can kind of jump into some of the stuff that you're an expert on and just kind of what's going on from there.
Yes, beautiful. Well, first and foremost, I quit corporate America 9 years ago to pursue my true entrepreneur spirit, which I got sick and tired of being a slave to a clock pretty much and making someone else rich. So I had quit in November 2008, left, salary behind, commission job that paid well, but I wasn't happy in doing what I was doing. So in order for me to pursue my happiness, I had to quit corporate America, and I started working from home, doing internet marketing, network marketing, learning how to build websites, learning all about marketing, social media, and a bit of everything else pertaining to the internet. And so now I run a digital web agency called Bonet Enterprises with my lovely daughter, which is a digital web agency which markets and promotes for small and big businesses. I do web development for small and big businesses as well. I'm into the health. I'm a health coach, which pretty much has led me to pursue the path of helping people on improving their health and getting people back on track on living a more cleaner lifestyle. And being a health coach entails a bit of getting to know people, and that's what my passion is being able to help and inspire people through my own experiences that I've experienced living this, like you mentioned, vegan, raw, pure living lifestyle through veganism.
Very good. And so you got into the entrepreneur thing. You started with the web agency, and is that sort of the focus of your time at this point?
Yes, most of the time is dedicated to the clients, my web agency, and also doing health coaching as well and consulting.
Very cool. And I can just say, Jeremiah has been helping us out with some things, and I can say the guy very much knows his stuff. I would highly recommend you to anybody who's listening to this podcast as well. And no, he didn't pay me to say that. So okay, very good. And then you are actually moving to Ecuador. I know I probably should have mentioned this in the bio. Your mother, I believe, correct, is Ecuadorian. I think you were born in the States though, right? Born in New York, I believe. And please correct any of that's wrong. And then you're planning on moving to Ecuador sometime late this summer, early fall?
Yes, that is correct. My mother's from Ecuador. She came when she was 13 years young. She moved to New York, and she had me. I'm a New Yorker, and she had me. She was very young when she had me. She was about 17 years young, and she had me. I'm originally from the Bronx, New York.
Very
So
cool.
I'm looking to go back to Ecuador. I've done a lot of research through the years, and it just made sense the way I live my life, raw, pure living lifestyle, plant based, and I just decided to make the shift and change and go back to my mother's land, right, and which would be Ecuador.
So, I mean, you mentioned a little bit about, the lifestyle, but what's bringing you to Ecuador? I mean, tell that story if you don't mind.
Well, the journey of veganism is taking me to Ecuador. Being able to get away from what I call the matrix
Yep.
of the United States. It's something that I'm very passionate about when it comes to healthy living. I've been able to change my life because of the transition of plant-based lifestyle, and I want to be able to not only improve my health even more, meaning I want to be able to breathe cleaner air. I want to be able to have cleaner water. I desire, not want, because they say when you want, you don't get your wants, you get your desire. So I desire to be able to wake up and not breathe chemicals. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that are not aware of the chemicals in the air, the toxins that are in the air. So Ecuador is one of the most beautiful countries in the world. I'm not saying this because my mother's from Ecuador or I am Ecuadorian. This is because me, first and foremost, I'm a researcher. I'm a researcher and I'm a truth seeker. And I was able to research for many years and know that Ecuador is one of the countries that has the most purest and cleanest air. And the soil is not depleted soil. And I want to be able to grow my own vegetables, my own fruits. And Ecuador is the country that's going to help me pursue that, I feel.
hmm And Darnell, I mean, I think like me and you, when we were researching and looking for places to do, our project, we kind of, it was really Ecuador brought us here for very similar reasons, not necessarily the vegan thing specifically, but the soil and air and water and all those things. I'm sure you have a million questions for Jeremiah, so jump right into it. But I'm kind of curious, just from your perspective, how Ecuador has fit the bill for two people like us or one person like yourself that was also looking for similar things.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jeremiah hit the nail on the head there for a lot of the things that attracted us to Ecuador. I guess, Jeremiah, my question for you first is, where in Ecuador is your mother from? And secondly, why Loja out of all the places in Ecuador that you could potentially move?
Well, my mother happens to be from Guayaquil, Ecuador, and the reason I chose Loja was because through the research I found that not only is it the cleanest air quality and the water, but it's a small city. There's not many. There's up like the expat community. There's not many yet. Like the expats, I've researched. They're more like in Cuenca and Vilcabamba, which is fine for me. But I want to be able to go to a place where I'm able to build that community as well. To be part of an upcoming expat community where there's be able to attract more people to Loja, because Loja's not only is through my research is one of like the cleanest cities as well, but it happens to be one of the safest. And again, I have a daughter, and I want her to be safe as well. My daughter needs to be safe. I pride myself in protecting my daughter, and it's one of the safest cities in Ecuador. And the culture there as well is phenomenal through the research that I've done. And it's a beautiful city. If anyone has not heard about Loja, I strongly suggest you go to YouTube and look up Loja, Ecuador. So many videos that pretty much sealed the deal for me. And besides the fact I can't be by, I have to be straightforward. After I met Jesse, I said, "Wow, this is forget about it." Abe, Abundant Living Ecuador is in Loja as well. So I said, "That's it. I don't need to search no more."
Well,
Loja it is. Even though Darnell, I believe you're in Vilcabamba,
No, I actually just moved to Cuenca
Cuenca.
back in January, but I had lived in Ecuador for just over 3.5 years, so I know it well.
in
And
Loja.
those are a lot of the things that attracted me to Loja initially. So, no, I think those are all really good points. I just wanted to hear it from your perspective. I think our listeners, if anybody has been listening to us for any period of time, I think you have a good reason of why, both Jesse and I chose Loja. In fact, I chose Loja from the beginning. Jesse was in Vilcabamba initially and then ended up coming to Loja. But Vilcabamba is only 40 minutes down the road. So I think you're pretty familiar with our story and why we chose Loja. But it's always good to hear what attracts people to the city, because it's a place that's just, off the beaten path for most expats. And whether you're, born in the States or you've got an one Ecuadorian parent, if you're from another place in Ecuador, Loja is almost as foreign to you as it is to somebody who has no roots or no experience in Ecuador anyway. It really is that different, in my opinion. So, yeah, I think those are all really good points. The other thing that I wanted to touch on as well, too, is when I got a chance to look at your YouTube channel, I noticed that there's a lot of, I would call them synchronicities between, things that we talk about on our show and things that you talked about, things that jumped out at me outside of, your profession with digital marketing and being a vegan and talking about topics like getting GMOs out of your diet, getting rid of worms and pesticides, parasites, excuse me. I also saw some really interesting videos about Bitcoin, about the truth about birth certificates, sovereignty, all stuff that is really near and dear to our hearts on the show. I'd love to get you to talk a little bit more about how you came about learning about those topics and maybe how Ecuador fits into some of the things that you were trying to do when you relocate here.
Well, I started getting into well, again, I'm a researcher by heart. I'm a researcher and I'm a truth seeker. And I started researching it started back after September 11th, actually, is when my research journey began. And I just started seeking truth, and I started finding out that everything I've been taught in school, everything I've been taught by my parents was, hate to say it, but was a lie, was not truthful, was not factual. And I just started doing my own research and finding out that a lot of the things that we have been taught in school is not truthful. We've been misled, in my opinion. And I just started educating myself, waking up, and started seeing that things as we see it is not as how we see it. It's something that became a mission for me every day, to just research and find out about things that I thought were normal, were okay. And as I did my research, I'm finding out that this was something that I needed to spread the word about, and not only spread the word, but be able to conduct my own research, and through that I was able to find out different things about birth certificate, what happens when you're born, They create about the bond that's created when you're born. Uh, what's happening with the food, what they're doing with the food, what they're doing with the water, with the pollutants in the water. And many people don't know what's going on right now with the water. For example, the fluoridated water. We've been taught that we must brush our teeth, and it must have what is it,
Fluoride.
fluoride, and the fluoride side effects is bonkers.
Yep.
Fluoride is is known to cause cancer, brain damage, and in humans and unborn fetus, bone weakness, like dental fluorosis, low estrogen and testosterone levels. It damages the stomach, the joint. You get joint problems, skeletal problems. The list goes on and on. And now there was just the CDC had came out. The CDC and ADA now advised to avoid using fluoride. So now they're saying that they're admitting that, yeah, fluoride is a dangerous cancer-causing chemical, and not only does it kills the brain cells and makes you dumb, it lowers the sex drive and infertility. It's the list goes on and on. So these are the type of things that I started educating myself on. I started learning how that what we put in and not only what we put in our body, but what we use externally as well. People are showering 1, 2, 3 times a day. They don't know the side effects, the heavy metals that's in the water, the pollutants, the radioactive particles that's in the water, the pesticides that's in the water. Unless you have a water filter, you're bathing in toxic chemicals, And this is the reason why I'm leaving the States and going to Ecuador, because I want to have a healthier, longer lasting life and be able to share my knowledge that I've gained through the years with the people in Ecuador, because I know in Ecuador the knowledge that I have will benefit a lot of people that are not able to go to a job, or maybe they have a job but they want to make some side income, and I want to be able to bring my knowledge and my expertise and show people how to make money from home using the power of the internet.
Yes. No, that's great. I appreciate you sharing that. Go ahead, Jess.
No, sorry. Go right ahead.
I'll just share a quick anecdote, and then I'll switch. Go over to you, Jesse, for any additional questions you have. But it's just funny, in traveling to Guadeloupe the last couple of days, I kind of had a real experience with some of the things that you're talking about, Jeremiah. Just in traveling through the airport, it turned out that after booking this flight a little bit more than 6 months ago, there was a chance that I couldn't come here because Guadeloupe, which is part of an overseas department of France, they had recently issued some kind of order or something like that anybody that was coming whose flight was originating from a place that had risk of yellow fever needed to have get vaccinated or have some kind of document saying that they didn't need the vaccine for some reason or whatever to enter into the country. So I was flying out of Guayaquil going to Miami at 11 o'clock at night, and this flight got delayed till 1 a.m. So they told me that I couldn't get on the flight, that they couldn't check me in because, I'm at risk for yellow fever. Well, anybody who knows anything about Ecuador knows that someone who's coming from Cuenca doesn't really have any risk of getting bitten by a mosquito ever. We're at 8,400 feet above sea level. But, that's neither here nor there. So I ended up getting into a situation where I figured out that if I just went on the Miami flight and checked in later to the other flight, I would be able to maybe potentially finagle something, because then my flight originates from Miami, which isn't at risk for yellow fever. So then I don't need to do all these things. So I get to Miami, we sort everything out, and I'm going through the checkpoint. And, now, unlike the last time I went to the U.S. almost 4 years ago, where they had the option of, going through the metal detector or going through that, that body scanner that radiates your body. I said, you know what? I'm cool. I'll take the aggressive pat down. Well, now, 3 years ago, they had somebody ready to go. And now they make you wait. Literally, I had to wait 20, 25, close to 30 minutes to get the pat down. And then they tell me, oh, well, now there's some irregularities. We need to do it again. So I got groped by a,
Wow.
twice by a TSA agent.
Who enjoyed it a little too much, I would imagine.
Wow.
Yeah, for, I don't know, somewhere around, the whole process took another 20 minutes in addition to having to wait 20 to 30 minutes to get him to see if he wanted to grow. So
he did.
It's just, really, really, it just made me realize, wow, these are some of the reasons why I ended up coming here. And I've been in Ecuador so long, I've forgotten what it's like. It's just a completely different lifestyle. It has its pros, but it definitely has a lot of cons. And I think you touched on a lot of them in your initial comments. So I just wanted to share that. And, Jesse, I'll turn it over to you for any questions or comments.
Yeah, I mean, I also opt out of the radiation machine at the airports. And then when they give me the aggressive pat down, I have to have a very strong inner conversation with myself to not bounce the guy's forehead off my knee as he's, on the inside of my thigh. It's, yeah, go ahead.
No, one more thing I'll add to that. It was funny because I've gotten, a lot of experience getting aggressive pat downs going from the coast to the mountains in Ecuador by bus. But the funny thing about Ecuador is they'll have anybody do that to you. It could be a man, it could be a woman.
Yeah.
They're not saying, do you want to go in the private room? They do it in front of everybody. And I was just kind of laughing to myself. I was actually laughing with the guy who was groping me because I'm telling him, lots of people in Miami come from, Latin descent. So we're kind of chatting. I was like, yeah, I've been in Ecuador. You're asking me all these questions. You're asking me if I'm comfortable, if I want to go into a side room. It's just funny because how they treat you in the States, but then also they have to they have to also cover themselves legally, which is something that really doesn't exist in Ecuador.
No.
No one's going to ask you, how you feel about it. They have a job to do and they're going to do it. And that's that. There's no, I'm going to tell you that I'm going to touch your groin, your sensitive areas with the back of my hand as opposed to the front of my hand.
Yeah. The whole, go ahead.
He's reading me a script and I'm just it was just amusing. And I shared that with him and it lightened the mood. And I think the other thing that I realized as well is that the people are just instruments of the system. He doesn't want to grope me any more than I want to be groped. He's just doing his job. And I think that a lot of what's going on in the States right now is taking place at such a low level of consciousness. People feel called to do something different, but they don't really feel like they have another option. But you have so many people that are thinking about moving out of countries like the U.S. to other places, just like Jeremiah, just like our situation. And some people end up making the leap, but, unfortunately, many people don't. And I think that's one of the things that, keeps these countries and these places, at, where they're at.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many places we can go with this conversation. I think this is really beautifully said by both of you. I really appreciate sort of both of what you said, both of you. I just want to say though, for people that are listening to this, if you're somebody who's done some of the research that Jeremiah has, I have dove into that world very deeply, starting about 10 years later than you, Jeremiah, more like that started for me somewhere around 2011, 2010, 2011, 2012, those years. But if you're in that, if you've dove into that world, and if these are topics that interest you, and if you're thinking about leaving the States or Europe or other places for those reasons, you should be aware, the disclaimer on the rah-rah for Ecuador. The disclaimer is that agenda that you, Jeremiah, or anybody else is trying to get away from is everywhere, and it is in Ecuador. And in the 4 years that myself and Darnell have been here, the rate of change implementing some of those things that we were also trying to get away from has been really astounding. And I have friends in Panama and friends in Brazil and friends in Chile and friends in Uruguay and other places. It's everywhere. And I mean, just to give you an example of that, and you mentioned fluoride, and I've done a lot of that research as well. I basically spent the better part of 2 years, if not longer than that, doing an enormous amount of research on a lot of I'm sure the same topics. And in Ecuador they put fluoride in the salt, whereas and in the States, like you said, they say it's good for your teeth. Well, in Ecuador they say it's good for your throat. So it's just kind of an example, but I just think people should be aware. I think really, Jeremiah, that you can create the kind of lifestyle that you're looking for here, and I think it is a lot easier than the States. And I think the things like the water and the air and the quality of food, absolutely, those things check the box, and the quality of nature, and we don't have chemtrails all the time, at least in this area, etc. But the agenda is here as well.
That's right, definitely. I know that cannot be escaped, because it's happening all across the world, especially when it comes to chemtrails. That's the happening on a mass scale all across the world. I believe there are actually countries that are starting to ban chemtrails. I'm not really sure what those countries are, but there are countries that are starting to ban. I believe also in California, there's a place in California where they're now starting to ban. I think there was a city it's a no chemtrail zone.
Yeah, right. I saw that. Yeah.
You saw that? Yeah. So this change is coming. We have to be the ones that have to demand for it, because if people don't demand change, then they're going to continue doing what they've been doing, and it's not good what they've been doing.
All right, well, let's jump into this. I mean, we're really not an esoteric show here. We really mostly focus on Ecuador, but fuck it. let's jump into this stuff for a minute. I agree with what you said there. But how do you demand it? Because I mean, from my perspective, and both you guys chime in. From my perspective, it's like human beings have been protesting and demanding stuff forever, and that doesn't work at all. If you look at I mean, I remember going to a march in New York City when I was of a very different political leaning than I am now. I remember going to a march in New York City in the early 2000s. It must have been I don't know, sometime around the time that we were invading. Bush was invading Iraq. I remember going to a march, some kind of like march against the war or against the war. I mean, there had to be, sorry, just getting a lot of background noise there. There had to be, 1 million people there at this march. These things don't do anything. So when you say demand change, I mean, how do we do it? Isn't it ultimately an inner journey? Like, isn't it ultimately a creation of your own that sort of fans out and interacts with other people, creating their own, and then kind of creates something new? It doesn't seem to me that it's a pushback against the existing.
I don't know. I mean, I've got 5 words for you. Swift boat veterans for truth. Just figured I'd throw that in there.
Yeah, I mean, I know what that is, but what's the? I don't see the connection. Explain.
Okay, well, the connection is that they demanded change.
Gotcha.
And Jesse, I gotta add, Darnell's a perfect example of how he said, no, I'm not gonna go through the radiation screen. I'm not gonna go through that. You're gonna have to scan me down. That's how people start saying, no, I'm not gonna go through this. There's another way. I'm gonna do this way. Petitions, believe it or not, they do work. Starting a movement is a real thing. We're educating people, letting them know, look, you pay with your dollar. When you stop buying processed processed food, GMO foods, and you start demanding for organic, guess what happens? These companies have to change. So it's not as easy as saying, you know what, we can start a movement, or we can sign a petition, and change will come. We have to be the change. It starts with us. You, Darnell and I, it starts with us. So as we begin to change and we start implementing, certain things that we're not going to continue to allow, then people start following. Because people, we want to be led. People are naturally followers. There's not many leaders. Then eventually people will become leaders, and that's how I feel. Based on my opinion, I think that petitions do work, and it's a real thing. And just like Darnell did, perfect example, went to the airport, said, "No, you're gonna wand me down. I'm not gonna go, through that radiation machine." A lot of people don't understand, and I do the same thing when I travel. They have to wand me down, just like Darnell said. Sometimes they take 20, 30 minutes to come, and people don't realize, when you go through those machines, that's potentially fatal radiation sickness that you're getting. I think it's 10,000 times more powerful, more toxic than the radiation that you go through when you go to the dentist. It's
An
like
extra, yeah.
it damages the eyes. It's been known to damage the eyes. High doses of the radiation can trigger cataracts months later. They have said thyroid, our lungs. Where the DNA within us is vulnerable to DNA damage when radioactive material is near or is breathed in. The stomach is vulnerable. We're very sensitive. We're energy beings.
Yep.
So when we go through these types of radiation, this affects our organs, our skin. So again, this is how we can demand change, by not going through these machines, not drinking their tap water, not buying their GMO foods, and saying enough is enough, holding these people accountable for their actions.
Yeah.
One thing I will bring up while we're on the topic of the machines is, in the 20 to 25 minutes that I stood there, there were multiple families, single women with children, pregnant women who went, who were there, and they didn't send them through that machine. So if you're not going to send a pregnant woman or a child under the age of 5 in the machine, what the heck makes you think that I want to go through it?
Yeah,
Exactly.
I've had that same thought as well, when they it doesn't, it's fine, it doesn't do anything. Oh, you're under 12, go over there. Yeah, if it hurts the 6-year-old, it hurts me as well. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I guess I take the opposite perspective on that. Like, as I look at history, and I also believe that history has very, very little to do with what they taught us in school. As I look at history, I see sort of a continuing advancement of two things. Of one, of the agenda that's unfolding, that's playing out before our eyes, and that's a very long-term thing. And also of awakening on the other side of that, of a raising of consciousness, of an awakening. But as I see, as it pertains to change, as it pertains to the agenda, I see an ongoing march in the wrong direction for humanity, in the right direction of the agenda, in all of those ways. And despite all of the protesting, like I view the protesting almost as feeding it, as opposed to helping stop it. It's like absolutely the personal responsibility. So I agree with you on that part. But I think, like, until people stop demanding from others, to demand from who that X happens, until people realize that they're able to manage their own affairs completely independently of some would-be authority, that we're kind of like, that's to me sort of the bar, or the line of delineation, or whatever.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree. We have to be the change. We have to be the ones to take control of our own lives, and be the change. I couldn't agree with you more, my friend. Indeed.
Okay, let's jump in for a second. Darnell mentioned, or maybe that was before we started recording, about Bitcoin. You know a bit about that. You had sent this thing to me the other day, which I had heard of but don't know really anything about. But the whole blockchain, you had sent me this website, Steam It. Do you want to talk a little bit about those things?
Yeah, sure. Well, cryptocurrency is a digital. It's like a digital asset. It's like digital money it's the medium of exchange. Using cryptography. It's you're able to. It's like it's very interesting because the fiat, the dollar they say is worth for what, few cents. Okay, so now they created this cryptocurrency, like everybody's pretty much familiar with, like Bitcoin and some other coins. There's a whole bunch of coins out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty much a way where you can send, receive money, and it's not, Big Brother's not involved. It's a way that it's a global way to send money to one another without having the banks involved or any government involved. There's no owners when it comes to this, and it's a way that not only are you able to keep your money safe, but it's a type of peer-to-peer electronic cash system, so to say. The goal was to invent something many people. How can I put it? Because as we know, the banks, what has happened with the banks and the crash of the banks, so people know that their money isn't safe with these banks. So with Bitcoin, and which is the top cryptocurrency, Bitcoin happens to be a form of electronic cash system that uses, again, it's a peer-to-peer network, which is an amazing thing right now. And I believe it was created by this. The invention was created by this man named Satoshi. Nobody knows who he is, but Mr. Satoshi, they say he's a guy, but he could be just as well. He could be a woman. Found a way to build a decentralized digital cash system, and that's why it's attracted so many people, even bankers and people of high power, are now into the cryptocurrency because, again, it's decentralized pretty much.
Yeah, and for me, I have my doubts about if there's an agenda behind Bitcoin or not. But putting that aside, it's very interesting I mean, it's extremely interesting for the reasons you pointed out. To have control of your money outside of the system is obviously an amazing thing. But it's also very interesting to me for just diversification purposes. And that's something, we haven't gotten really, we started doing mostly guest shows over the last several months. And so we haven't really done a show where we just sort of talk about various topics in a long time. But in some of our earlier shows, we used to talk economics a lot and currency and investing. And, one of the things we've talked about a lot is how kind of foolish people are to think they're diversified when all of their assets are denominated in one currency. And so whether you're talking about Bitcoin or a metal or whatever that's, to me, that's actual diversification. If you have the sort of stockbrokers the stockbrokers definition of diversification, small cap, large cap, mutual fund, ETF, bond. Those are all levered to one currency. As you pointed out, all currencies in the world are fiat currencies. They're debt-based currencies, and there's a lot of inherent risk in that. So, whether it's Bitcoin, whether it's real estate, or whether it's gold and silver, that's actual diversification. So it's interesting to me from that standpoint as well.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing that, if had I did a video on YouTube, and I believe it was back in 2010. I was gonna get into Bitcoin. I was gonna invest in Bitcoin. Bitcoin at the time, if I'm not mistaken, it was about $7, $8, 7, 8, 9, 10, $11 when I was gonna get in. And as you see now, Bitcoin is at, I think, I checked today, is $2,600.
Yeah.
So you know how much money I would have made if I would have invested the amount of money that I was going to
Oh, you
invest.
didn't do it?
I didn't do it, and I
What?
had
Why did you chicken out, or was it just what
it's
was it?
it was I was skeptical as well.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was foolish as well. Foolish, sometimes we are foolish because sometimes we're so skeptical and afraid. And I'm a risk taker myself, and
Hmm.
I just didn't. I don't know. I beat myself up to this day because I was going to invest a few $100s, and I didn't do it. Had I done it, I would have made millions on that.
Yeah, that's yeah. A lot of people made a lot of money. In fact, there's a guy we're hoping to have on the show at some point who's that's all he does. That's his job. It's been his job for a long time. Is trade Bitcoin. I don't know exactly what he does, but he invests in Bitcoin. He knows that's what he does. So a lot of people have done very well. Darnell, you have other questions where you want to take this?
Yeah, just last question I had for you, Jeremiah, was just about the vegan lifestyle. Why? What drove you to do it? I saw some stuff on your YouTube channel as well too, and just curious to get more clarity myself, and then also to just share that with the listeners.
Well, the journey through veganism, so that is something that brought me to it because I was in a state of mind where I was not in a good state. My ex-wife at the time had broke up with me in 2010, so I was in such a different state of mind at the time. I was overweight, a bit depressed. I was not in a good state, and through that, we were together for 13 years. And so I was pretty saddened with that whole thing that happened. So I was looking for a change. I was looking to better myself because I knew, like most people, I spent years being overweight and unhappy with the way I looked and felt until I found the simplicity of raw, pure living lifestyle. And they say from something bad, something great always comes, and that's what I felt. The breakup was the best thing that ever happened to me because I realized what I was doing to myself all those years. I myself feel like I truly wasn't happy. We were together, but I wasn't happy with myself. And if I wasn't happy with myself, and I really truly didn't love myself the way I thought, then how in the world can I make someone else happy? And I knew that she wasn't, in a good state in our relationship, and it was just time to move on. I've always had big goals and dreams, and sometimes we outgrow people. So I was on the verge of high blood pressure and diabetes, and was carrying around, as I mentioned, 50 extra pounds of weight, which I call it toxins. And I didn't realize that the foods I was eating was causing havoc on my mind, my body, my soul, and overall health. It wasn't until I began researching again. I'm a researcher, and I started researching and educating myself that I realized how much I was contributing to my health and the suffering of my body and the animals alone. I started watching documentaries like Forks Over Knives, and I started researching what's in the meat. And meat, it promotes intolerable suffering and disease, not only among animals but also for many Americans by raising the risk of heart disease, diabetes, breast cancer, and early death. So that's when I started putting the pieces to the puzzle together. I started finding out that they were putting antibiotics in the food, bacteria contamination in the foods, the meats that I was digesting. I don't know if that meat that I was eating for all my life had cancer, and go to show years later, they're talking about animals now, these animals getting cancer. So what happens? We eat these meats that have these diseases and it's causing cancer. And I started putting all the pieces together, and I said, wow, we live in the greatest society and supposedly the greatest country in the world, yet we have the sickest society. It wasn't adding up. So that's why I decided to, not be part of the problem, but be part of the solution. The animals really touched me when I saw that documentary, and I said, you know what? I was led to veganism through what I believe was a spiritual awakening. I had started with a fast. I did a 7-day water fast, and through that 7-day water fast, I was able to actually do my research and find out that veganism was the best form of living, because we are what we eat, pretty much. And these gentle sounding phrases are used by the meat industry, like free range or cage free and grass fed and humanly raised, but they have a deep, darker secret. The dairy and restaurant industries do this to make you feel better about buying their products when they use these terms. And I started realizing that this is not the way I want to live my life. You know, I needed to change. And in order for me to change and lose that weight, I needed to do something drastic. You know, I needed to do something that was going to, you know, break from the norm. And then as I started reading books like the China Study, you know, the China Study, that which was written by Dr. T. Colin Campbell, I believe, he talks about casein, which makes up to, I believe it's like 87% of cow's milk protein, is the most significant carcinogen we consume. And, you know, a lot of studies and research, and it just blew my mind. And he was saying that, like, in the next 10 or 15 years, one of the things you're bound to hear is that animal protein is one of the most toxic nutrients of all that can be considered when you're eating animal protein. You know, so it was just a lot of research that I did and awakening, and I said enough is enough. I just changed my diet, and after I did that, a few days after, Jesse Darnell, I started feeling the changes. I was feeling better. You know, I wasn't sad the way I was feeling. Even after the breakup, I felt amazing. I felt like great. I could do this well, you know. And ever since then, I just said enough is enough, and I just got off all meat, and I got off the dairy. And I don't know if you guys know, you know, dairy, legally they are allowed to put about, I think it's like over 135 million pus cells is inside of a glass of milk, you know. And the main protein in milk, again, is casein, and it's toxic. And going back to the China study, and Dr. T. Colin, you know, writes about that, and it's toxic for humans. And why they're putting this in the milk? Why are little babies growing up, you know, with getting diseases that didn't exist before? Well, it's because of what's in the food and what's in the air and what's in the water. So I just decided to change my life through a raw, pure living lifestyle, predominantly organic, non-GMO foods. And I haven't gotten a cold. I've been raw vegan for the last 5 years. I have not gotten a cold. I have not gotten sick at all living this way. And I feel great, you know.
Yep. That's it.
That's a great message.
Go ahead, Darnell.
No, just wanted to say that's a great message, and I appreciate you sharing it. Yeah, Jesse, any questions from you?
Yeah, just you know, it's interesting, Jeremiah. You know, it's not rocket science, is it? You know, you treat your body really good, and your body stays healthy, and you don't get sick. It's funny, you know. I'm not a vegan. Darnell, you mind just muting out? I got those crickets are going crazy. Yeah, sorry about that. You know, I'm not a vegan. I call myself an aspiring vegan from time to time. You know, I have some meat, but I've noticed with myself, I have a very sensitive stomach. And basically the only way I feel okay and the only way my stomach feels okay is if I eat fruits and vegetables, and that's basically what I eat. You know, dairy, I don't do well with dairy. I don't do well with meat. And it's funny, you were mentioning to me, and I had a similar kind of experience, a similar sort of spiritual awakening a number of years ago as well, where I sort of changed all of that stuff for me as well: exercise, diet, lifestyle, you know, look. Also, one other thing that was interesting to me when you were talking, I saw that video and I saw pictures of you. And also, it was funny, I could just hear it in your voice when you were talking about that period of time in your life when you were eating that stuff and feeling that way and how you felt. You could hear it in your voice. And then I've also seen it in those pictures. So just knowing you, not personally then, but knowing you personally now and seeing those pictures and hear you talking about them, the change is very obvious to me just as an observer. But it was funny when you were talking about milk. I always, you know, I've had these conversations with lots of people. Again, I don't always stick to my own beliefs, but I've had these conversations with other people. It's like, you know, if a female human being pumped their breast milk, packaged it in a store, and tried to sell it to you, you would say that's disgusting, and you would never touch it. yet you will guzzle down that same thing of another species of a cow. Like it is so funny to me. And the same thing, the same thing with the meat. I agree with you. I've watched all those videos and I've done all that research as well on the industry and what you're eating. And there's literally shit in the meat, poop, like as well. But it's the same thing. I kind of look at it just as like from a very simplistic standpoint of when you take like an apple tree, for example, right? For an apple tree to exist, to meet, as an existence, as an entity, like for an apple tree to reach its potential, a human being is not necessarily, it's basically needed. I mean, a human being it's a symbiotic relationship. A human being can plant and then take care of and trim and do whatever you do to an apple tree. And that apple tree is going to be its best. It's going to produce these amazing apples. The apples are going to fall right off the tree and rot if we don't eat them. So it's a very symbiotic relationship. The apple tree offers you the apple, you eat it, it nourishes you. You don't hurt the apple tree by eating the apple. Whereas, you stick a knife in a cow's throat and kill it. The cow dies. You eat its meat. And that's maybe the nicest way to do it. It's a much less appealing sort of situation or relationship or karmic relationship.
So true, so true. And like you say, it's just a matter of realizing that your body's, like you say, you're not able to drink the milk, and it does your stomach doesn't accept it. Well, a lot of people don't know. Also, we have a second brain. The stomach happens to be where is considered our second brain. And we wasn't intended to be eating dead animals. A lot of people will get offended. A lot of people will be like, "You're crazy. How about the caveman?" We have to realize that, of course, if there's nothing else that you can eat and all you have is meat, and you're raising it and there's no antibiotics, there's a bit difference. But why is it that, we have an abundance of fruits and vegetables, yet we're still putting these animals to suffer? They're sentient beings.
Exactly.
They were not intended to be slaughtered for the sake of humanity. They're sentient beings. Look at a cow; they have feelings. Look at a pig; they're smarter than a dog, and I consider my dog very smart. And you go to YouTube, you pull up videos of dogs doing tricks and dancing. So imagine, what are we doing to ourselves? We're doing it to ourselves because at the end of the day, we're eating the karma. We're eating the suffering, and a lot of people don't know when you kill an animal like a pig or a cow, they release a toxin. It's a defense mechanism that they release. And guess what? People are eating this. They're eating this every single day. And if we just stop and, like you said, this isn't rocket science. This is common sense. If we just realize what we're doing, not only to ourselves, but to the animals, we can live a much better life if we just truly understand that we need to, look at what we're doing because we're causing havoc on the world, and we don't have to. That's why there's so much hatred and people, hating other religions, and that's why I say I don't believe in religion. I'm a spiritual being. Religion is not supposed to make you hate one another, and that's what's happening. So there's a lot of things that are happening, and it has to do with what people are consuming. That's why we have a society where it's war and people are hating on another and talking bad about another's because the foods, the GMOs, are changing their DNA within their body, so they're not acting the way they're supposed to be acting, which is in true loving state.
Unfortunately, I couldn't agree more. Sorry, go ahead.
This is saying, if you truly love animals, you don't eat them. And again, I'm not saying to people, I'm not saying, do not, become vegan. I'm just saying, people want to live healthier. They want to live longer, but they complain that they got arthritis. They complain that, they got this ailment and this ailment, but nature does not make mistakes. We have the remedy. The pharmaceutical industry does not want anybody to be healthy because there's no money in health. So I just hope that your listeners, I know we recap, we're closing out the show, but I just hope your listeners can understand that, animal agriculture is the leading cause of global warming, deforestation, species extinction, water depletion, the list goes on and on. So that's the reason why I've decided to just leave here and create a new life for myself and for my daughter and I, because Ecuador, like you say, it has its ups and downs, but at the end of the day, it's a beautiful country where you can live more freely and don't have to worry about being arrested for growing or collecting your rainwater.
That is true. Last question for me, and then I'll turn it over to Darnell for his final thoughts, and then Jeremiah will definitely give you a minute to talk about what you do and plug anything you would like to plug. Last question for me. I'm a small business owner. I'm calling you Bonet Enterprises, a digital web agency, and I need help, building my brand, building my footprint, adding to sales. Give me the 30-second or the 2-minute or even the 5-minute version of what you guys can do for somebody like myself. Give me the elevator speech or maybe the slightly longer version of that.
Well, my tagline for my business is we are in the business of helping business owners get what they need and want, which is an internet presence and more customers. You see, if you have an internet presence and don't have customers, then you really don't. You don't have no money coming in. Then you don't have a business. So I help. We specialize in online marketing solutions, which is branding and strategy, web design and development, social media marketing. We do print and graphic design, SEO, which is very important. When you have a website, a lot of companies, business people that do get websites, they hire web developers to build them a beautiful, stunning website. But these web developers don't know about SEO, which is SEO is search engine optimization, which is a strategy that helps drives more visitors to your site. So we help out with that, using simple, easy techniques to get businesses found on the first pages of Google, Yahoo, and Bing. We also do video marketing, pay-per-click, email marketing with autoresponder.
Very nice. Darnell? We lose you?
Darnell's probably on mute.
No, yeah, I was just on mute. Sorry about that. No, I would just say let's just get right into plug in your services. Where can people reach you, and go from there.
Well, beautiful. Yeah. Well, thank you. One of my websites is bonetenterprises.com, and that's again Bonet, Bonet, enterprises.com. There you can find our agency, and once again, we help out with internet marketing and web development. And if you anyone that does come to my website and get any of the services, we will be giving out a 10% off just for listening to the podcast. And Jesse, I don't know how you want to work that, but we'll give them 10% off and one free month of social media marketing as well.
Only from the mind of a digital marketing person would on the spot come up with that, but absolutely good idea, and we can handle that however you want, Jeremiah.
Awesome, great.
Well, that's really exciting. I appreciate that you would offer our listeners that, and I just want to thank you for joining us on the show. I was really excited when Jesse told me that you'd be joining us, and taking a look at some of the information that you have out there online about some of the things that you do, some of the things that you talked about, just really well aligned with, I think, everything that both Jesse and I think and see the world. So I'm really excited that you were able to join us on the show. Thank you again for your time. Again, this is Abundant Living Ecuador. We are a real estate relocation services firm based in southern Ecuador. You can reach us online at www.abecuador.com. That's A as in Apple, B as in boy, Ecuador.com, or via email at info@abecuador.com. Thanks again for joining us this week, and tune in next week for our next show.